So just to reiterate where our MTP joint is, um, in case you haven't had a chance to watch that tutorial or you just want a reminder, if I take my foot and put a finger at the big toe, and then on the knuckle of my big toe put my thumb and I push that and pull the end of my big toe, the what pushes into my finger on the other underside, that's my MTP joint. That's where we want to get weight. That is a sweet spot that when I get connected in there, I can access the tripod on the front of my foot and the tripod on the rear of my foot and become very dynamic, because I can, this spot with the sesamoids at the bottom of that metatarsophalangeal allows it to yaw left and right, it can pitch up and down, and it can also roll, because these two little bones that are that MTP joint, they allow for that joint 6 degrees of freedom there. So it can rotate like the earth, but I can also rotate or revolve and move around that point on both of the feet. So it's going to be a focal point for us for class today as we play with flying splits. Okay, so because it's an arm balance, we got to warm up the wrists and our hands a bit. So first stretch just sitting. We're going to stretch the arm out, bring the other hand up on the fingers, and you're going to bring the wrist passively into extension here, okay? Now I want to start to push the hand that's in extension. I want to start to push into my hand that is providing that passive stretch to try to move the fingers away from my forearm and just get a little activity there. For 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, now we're going to flex the wrist. Again, I'm just passively moving the wrist into this shape. I'm trying to keep my elbow straight, my shoulder unshrugged, and then I'm going to push the back of the knuckles and fingers into that hand, trying to straighten out the wrist, engaging some muscles there. So just for 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, and then we're going to let that go and we'll do the same thing on the other side. Hello, Margaret. I'm just going to mute you. All good, all good. We are going to have fun today. Just have some blocks handy. And we're going to come back and do this wrist again. But so for the first wrist, you're just going to take that arm out straight. And we're going to take our hand passively pulling the fingers towards our forearm, just the point where it's comfortable, okay? And then we're going to actively push the fingertip pads into the palm of that hand, trying to straighten out the wrist, just creating a bit of an isometric there for 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then we're going to take the wrist into flexion, use our other hand to just bring us comfortably where we can have a straight elbow into some passive wrist flexion. And then we're going to actively create that isometric into our other hand, trying to straighten out that wrist for 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then we'll one more time on each side. So going over back to that first hand, again, bringing it into some passive extension with the elbow straight, and then we're going to start to work into an active isometric here, trying to straighten the wrist. Our hands resisting, just so you feel the muscles in the forearm starting to work for 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then again, we're going to take this into some passive flexion just to where it's comfortable. Then we're going to work the back of that hand into our other hand, trying to straighten that wrist. Just in an isometric here for 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, one more time, that first wrist. Find your passive range that you can comfortably be in, and then start to try to straighten that wrist without bending the elbow for 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then we're going to take it into wrist flexion. And again, find that passive range with the straight elbow that works. And then you're going to work at straightening that wrist, pressing the back of the hand into that other hand for 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let it go. Okay, we're going to do it one more time, but this time we're going to have a bent elbow when we do it. So coming into wrist extension, and then finding that isometric where we're working to straighten that wrist. Keeping the elbow bent for 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then wrist flexion with a bent elbow again. Find that isometric where now we're trying to straighten that wrist for 4, 3, 2, and 1. One time with the bent wrist and extension on that other side. Three, 2, and 1, and then in wrist extension with the bent elbow for 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good, let it go. Just bring the fingertips in to make a fist, straighten out and stretch out the fingers wide. So when we're on our hands and knees, whether the arms are straight or the elbows are bent today, we want to work at creating that isometric against the mat, so we're not just passively resting on the wrists, okay? So just like we did here with the stretch, we want to actively press the fingertip pads, press the fingers and the base of the fingers away from the forearm to stabilize that wrist and be active. Okay, so we're going to get our blocks, and we're going to use them a couple different ways. So at the beginning, we kind of looked at where that MTP joint is. And just a reminder, if I take the end of that toe and then bring my thumb to the knuckle of my big toe, if I press that knuckle, the bone that pops down into my finger on the base of the bottom of the foot, that's the MTP joint. That's the like half a centimeter spot that we want to work to get active and get pressure into. So if it's not on the ground, we can still be active into that MTP joint when the toes are tucked under. So now for some of us, getting the toes under can be tricky. So there's a couple of things we're going to do here today. One, we're going to tuck the toes under, and we're going to bring the bottom of the shins up onto blocks. So the top of the shins are on the blocks, and we've got the big toes tucked under. Okay, we're going to sit back, and hopefully, depending on the flexibility of that big toe, you might be here, you might have your weight more forward, you might have your hands on the ground. So just kind of work where it works for you in those the big toe joint, that you can get some weight into that MTP joint. My big toes are shorter than some people, so like someone with a really long big toe, this could be trickier, okay? Play with heels in versus heels in line with the sit bones versus heels out, and see if you can kind of get that sense of feeling that MTP joint. in hands and knees here, where you can kind of reach that MTP joint, and it's like, feels like it becomes easy to have the legs sort of set up and engage and the knees come off the blocks. Okay, so for some of us, that will get us into the MTP joint. For others, that's not going to do the trick. So the other way we could work it is I could put my blocks behind me, and then I'm going to put the base of my toes, or the end of my metatarsophalangeal, along the edge of the blocks. So my toes aren't touching the ground now, and I've got that lip of my foot that is the metatarsophalangeal of the foot. If I have my foot model here, it's like this is the part that is on the block. So these long bones that feed into the midfoot, not the toes. If I get the toes out of the way, these guys are what are on the block. And so for some of us, they're on that top edge of that block, that'll give us a more clear sense of, okay, there's that MTP joint on both feet. Again, play with heels in versus heels straight versus heels out. Okay, and get a sense of being able to feel that first metatarsal head. When the hands come onto the mat, we're being active and isometrically pushing the fingertip pads and the base of the fingers into the ground. Okay, and then there's one other way that we're going to kind of explore it 1 foot at a time, and that is bringing the 2 blocks together with like a nano, like a ½ inch space or less between the blocks. Okay, I'm going to go this way so the camera can see, where then I'm going to get 1 MTP joint in that space. And just play with kind of spinning it, rotating it, pressing it down into that space, and see what that does for me. So it's just in the valley between the 2 blocks. Okay, if you had another block or bolster, you could prop up the tibia. And just start to play with, as you get active in that, does it help you be able to kind of stabilize through that one leg and move your other leg? Okay, try it a few times on each side. Just a bit of a space. I get that MTP joint in there. And then I'm kind of pushing down and rotating into that space between the blocks. Okay, I'd love to hear, Margaret, which one kind of helped you sort of feel the connection and stabilize the leg? Which variation? They're all just different. And as an aside, I will say with this action here, and then playing with stepping that other leg up, what becomes kind of interesting is this, I'm going to call this my stance leg. When I get that MTP joint, if I think of the muscles at the front of the thigh, the quads, they kind of braid into one another and into the center of the bone, okay? And I think of the quads, which we'll use in the flying splits today, like braiding into one another to let me swing this other leg forward. And then when I get on that MTP joint, I braid that quad and spin the hamstring, and it's like I can get from one leg to the other leg, okay? So something to kind of play with. Okay, so we're gonna scoot the blocks to the side for a second. Hopefully one of those kind of helped you find your MTP so that when you come onto all fours, maybe just tucking the tip of the big toe under has you be able to feel kind of where that MTP joint is, and that it can kind of yaw, pitch away from you, spin, and you can kind of feel how that comes up the chain. Okay, so we're on our hands and knees. We're going to take one block back, put it on its lowest setting, and then the MTP joint, and this could be, if it worked better to use the 2 blocks and have the space, you could do that with the 2 blocks and have the MTP in the space. I'm just going to use the 1 block. Hands are forward, and all we're going to do is press into that MTP joint, and we're going to bring our other knee up towards the tricep of that arm, and then come back onto all fours. Okay, press through that MTP, float the opposite knee up towards the tricep and the back of that other arm. One more time. Find that MTP. So it's kind of dog in a fire hydrant kind of action. And then we're coming back. Okay? And then we're going to switch which side we're anchoring through that back MTP. Okay, on our hands and knees, anchor through that back MTP, float that knee up to the elbow for the back of that arm on that other side. Good, one more. Okay, we've got to let our weight shift forward. You'll notice when your weight shifts forward that the hands automatically interact, hopefully, with the ground. So you're not feeling stuff in your wrists, okay? Now, this is where I'm going to use the foam block. If you only have cork blocks, that's fine. You just might want a blanket or towel over the edges so it's a little softer. So we're going to place one cork block at the back of the mat. And we're going to place the ankle, the front of the ankle of one of the legs on there. So now, even though the ankle is on there, I want you to still kind of be connected to that MTP joint on that foot. Okay, so we're on the front of that ankle, and we're still working into that MTP joint. Okay, as we do, we're then going to bring the opposite knee up to the outside of that other arm. Let the weight shift forward. Maybe one of the times you press so firmly into that block that that back knee comes off the ground as well. Good. Okay, switch sides. So find the front of that ankle, okay? Find that MTP joint, push down into that front of the ankle, so much so that that knee might come off as that other knee comes up to the outside of that arm. Let your weight shift forward. Elbows will bend. Good. Let that go. Okay, we're going to come off of our wrists for a second and work with these actions on our back. And then we'll come back into this position and work through 4 variations using the blocks. Okay, so onto our back. If you have access to a wall, it can be helpful to either have your head towards the wall or your feet, so that when we reach out, I can, if my feet are to the wall, I can like anchor that long leg. If my head is to the wall, then when I bring that knee, I can use it as a target to kick that foot towards. Okay? So, hands are going to come up, elbows are bent. So we're in more of this like chaturanga type arm shape here. Okay? And then keeping one foot on the ground, pressing through that MTP joint, we're going to bring the other knee to the upper side of that elbow. Okay? From there, then you might think of that idea of braiding the quads to straighten out that leg. Try to keep it connected with that elbow. And then work that other leg, straighten it out, reach into that MTP joint onto the wall. Bring both heels towards the butthole. Okay? And then reach out through the MTP joints. Both heels towards the butthole. One more time. Okay, and then bring both feet to the ground. And we'll just take the legs side to side, go from the inside of the foot to the outside of the foot. Let the pelvis follow the legs. You can let the rib cage follow the pelvis. Okay, and the next time through center, we're going to pause. Set up those hands again, as if chaturanga. If you wanted, you could have the blocks on them, or a bolster, kind of mimic the floor. I think once we're back there again, that's going to be enough load. But this is where you'll come back to if at any point when we go through the 4 variations of the full posture that you want to come back to this position. No, you can come back to this position to practice them as well. Okay, so again, we're bringing knee to elbow, and then think of braiding the quads to get back that leg out. Okay, you could add then that stretch out with the other leg. Think heel to butthole to reset, and then reach out those MTP joints. Heels to butthole, reach out through those MTP joints. Heels to butthole, reach out through those MTP joints. One more time. Good. Okay. Let that go. You can set those blocks down. One more time again. Take the legs. Find your MTP joints here. Think of them spinning the lead leg. It's going to spin towards the 4 toes. The trail leg, it spins away from the 4 toes. Let the legs go, let the pelvis go, let the rib cage follow, and then spin and the other way. So if they were on the ground, they're rotating into the ground. Still even in the air, they're spinning, rotating in the air. Taking the legs, pelvis, rib cage side to side. Maybe even think of the shoulder blades like hands on your back. As the rib cage goes, the shoulder blade presses into the back of that rib cage. Good. The next time you come through center, I'm going to pause, roll onto our side, and come back up onto our hands and knees. Okay. Okay, we've got time. We're going to do 2 more things just to get the adductors really ready for this and happy. So take your 2 blocks and we're going to set up that little space for our MTP joint between the 2 blocks. So I'm going to kneel beside the blocks and I'm going to bring one leg, like I would in Warrior 2, out to the side with that MTP joint in the space between those 2 blocks. And I'm going to let my heel kind of spin in to really kind of connect me through that MTP joint. Okay, and then I'm going to let the knee go forward. I'm going to reach the knee forward. Really thinking of getting some space from knee to knee. Reaching the 2 knees away from one another. Okay, then I'm going to come back onto both my knees, flip the other way, and again place that MTP joint in that space between the 2 blocks. I'll set up where I need to set up. The stance knee that's on the ground could have the foot tucked under, or you could come up onto it. Just make sure if you're up on it, that again you spin that MTP joint and that the knee on the ground stays happy as we reach those knees away from one another. You're reaching those knees away from one another. Good, one more time. Okay, and then we'll bring both knees to the ground. Now we're going to take our blocks to the back of our mat. So have them kind of close together. Again, you can just use the 1 block to get the MTP joint on the edge of, or you can utilize that gap to get your MTP joint in there to really find it if that helps. So 1 foot, this is going to be our back leg, and we want to have the hips a little closer forward. We're going to find that MTP joint either on the edge of the 1 block or on the 2 blocks. So instead of having the front of the ankle, we're going to spin and reach down through that MTP joint, straightening that back knee. Just do that a few times. You feel how your weight shifts forward in the direction of your head. Okay, so once you've got that action, then we can play with finding that MTP joint and that opposite knee comes to the elbow. Back knee could stay on the ground. You could stay working through that MTP joint, or it can come off the ground. You could keep the front knee bent or work at kicking it and straightening it out. Okay? So work within your lines of tension and compression. I'm going to do one this way so I don't have the wall kind of as my limiting factor here. And if you do have a third block, we're going to do this variation in a sec, it could act as the target for the breastbone. So I work into that MTP joint and then set myself back, work into that MTP joint and then set myself back. Okay? I know it's sweaty work. Okay, we're going to switch sides. How are you doing, Margaret? Good, good, good. Awesome. Okay, so switch sides. So the other foot is going to be our back leg. Find that MTP joint. This is now my up leg in the back. So I find I really have to kind of work the heel in on it to get into that MTP joint. So first, find that MTP joint. Okay, that knee might stay on the ground, it might come off, and then work the knee to that elbow. And then work straightening that knee that's on the elbow. Whew. Okay. Good. So that's one way we could work it.